The chandelier light reflected off polished marble floors as the most powerful woman in the city stood quietly at the host podium. Invisible, her name carried weight in boardrooms, in investment circles, in entire industries. But tonight, none of that seemed to matter. Her reservation had been confirmed days in advance. The table was ready. The evening had been carefully planned. And yet, within seconds of approaching the front desk, something shifted. Smiles tightened, eyes narrowed. A paper was lifted, then slowly torn. No tables left. The words echoed louder than the clinking wine glasses behind her. What the staff didn't realize was that the woman they had just dismissed wasn't just another guest. She owned the building, and by the end of the night, not one of them would still have a job. If stories about power, dignity, and silent justice move you, make sure you like, share, comment, and subscribe. You're watching Black Legacy. Danielle Carter had built her empire from silence, not the kind of silence that meant weakness, the kind that meant discipline. Raised in a working-class neighborhood on the south side of the city, Danielle grew up watching her mother clean office buildings she would later one day own. She learned early that brilliance wasn't always rewarded immediately, especially not when wrapped in black skin. Her father had once told her that the world would try to test her confidence before it ever tested her competence. He was right. Danielle graduated top of her class from a prestigious university where professors praised her research, but investors overlooked her ideas. She watched less qualified peers secure funding simply because they fit the image. So she adapted. She stopped asking for permission. At 32, she founded Carter Hospitality Group, a boutique real estate and restaurant acquisition firm focused on reviving struggling luxury establishments. Within 10 years, she owned 17 high-end venues across 3 states. Her strategy was simple: buy underperforming luxury spaces, rebuild culture, retrain staff, and rebrand with excellence. But one property had always been personal: Lunois, an upscale restaurant known for crystal chandeliers, velvet seating, and a reputation for exclusivity. Years ago, Danielle had applied there as a hostess while in college. She had been rejected within minutes, told she wasn't the right aesthetic. She never forgot it. When Lunois began struggling financially due to mismanagement and declining reviews, Danielle saw opportunity. Quietly, through a holding company, she acquired a controlling stake. The transition of ownership was scheduled to be announced at a private leadership dinner tonight. Only the senior management knew ownership was changing hands. They just didn't know who the new CEO was. Danielle chose not to inform them ahead of time. She wanted to observe. Culture reveals itself when it doesn't know it's being watched. So she made a reservation under her real name, and she arrived alone, dressed in a tailored navy suit, carrying a structured leather bag. Every inch of her presence radiated quiet authority. The restaurant glowed warmly from the outside. Inside, the atmosphere buzzed with curated elegance. Couples sipped wine. Executives closed deals. Servers moved gracefully. At the host stand stood a blonde woman with a tight bun and a professionally rehearsed smile. Danielle stepped forward calmly and gave her name. And that's when the temperature changed. The hostess glanced at the screen. Her fingers paused. Her eyes scanned Danielle. Not her name, but her appearance. Something unreadable flickered across her face. The smile thinned. She checked the list again, then sighed dramatically. The restaurant was full, she explained, no availability. Danielle gently mentioned her confirmed reservation. The hostess pretended to search again. The reservation was supposedly missing. Strange. Danielle showed her confirmation email. The hostess took the printed reservation slip, stared at it, then slowly tore it in half, and, oops, delivered with mock sympathy. Behind them, 2 white guests arrived without reservations and were seated within seconds. Danielle noticed, so did several patrons nearby. The injustice wasn't loud. It was smooth, polished, subtle enough to be deniable, but deliberate. Danielle felt that familiar tightening in her chest, the one she had felt years ago when doors closed politely in her face. She scanned the dining room. There were empty tables, reserved signs placed strategically, servers whispering, a manager watching from the bar area without intervening. She realized something critical. This wasn't an accident. It was culture, the culture she now owned. The general manager, Thomas Whitaker, eventually approached, mid-40s, immaculate suit, measured tone. He reiterated the apology, explained they were at capacity, suggested perhaps she try somewhere less busy. Danielle observed his language carefully. He didn't ask her name again. He didn't verify anything. He didn't offer accommodation. He assumed she'd step aside quietly. Instead of arguing, she sat at the bar, ordered sparkling water, watched. Over the next 30 minutes, she witnessed a black couple told they must wait despite open seating, a Latino family discouraged from dining due to large party inconvenience, a white influencer ushered in immediately with staff enthusiasm, servers ignoring certain tables longer than others. Patterns revealed truth faster than words. Danielle's jaw tightened slightly, but her posture remained composed. She texted one person, her legal director. "Come now. Bring documentation." 10 minutes later, she stood, walked back to the host stand, requested to speak with the general manager and department heads. Thomas approached again, visibly irritated. He asked if there was a problem. There was, just not the one he expected. Danielle calmly opened her bag, removed a thin leather folder, and placed it on the marble counter. Inside were acquisition papers, ownership transfer agreements signed, executed, effective immediately. Thomas's confidence cracked first. Then the hostess's face drained of color. Then the whispers began. Because in that moment, the invisible woman became the most powerful person in the room. The dining room grew quieter without anyone announcing why. Power has a sound, and it had just entered fully. Danielle introduced herself properly. Chief Executive Officer of Carter Hospitality Group, new majority owner of Lunois, effective tonight. She didn't raise her voice, she didn't accuse, she didn't humiliate. She simply described what she had observed: the torn reservation, the selective seating, the pattern dismissals, the lack of verification, the silent compliance from management. She explained that luxury without integrity is just decoration, and that discrimination dressed in politeness is still discrimination. Thomas attempted to explain, to minimize, to suggest misunderstandings, but security footage had already been accessed remotely by her legal team. The evidence was clear. Danielle then did something unexpected. She didn't fire just the hostess. She terminated the entire front-of-house leadership team, effective immediately, because culture isn't created by one employee, it's tolerated by many. Gasps rippled across the restaurant. Some guests applauded softly. Others stared in disbelief. Danielle turned to the staff who remained: servers, kitchen workers, bussers. She clarified something crucial. This was not about revenge. This was about standards. Anyone willing to uphold equity, respect, and professionalism would be retrained and retained. Anyone unwilling could leave tonight. Silence lingered. Then one server stepped forward. Then another. The power dynamic had shifted permanently. Outside, word began spreading. Within hours, social media posts from witnesses began circulating. Black woman denied reservation, turns out to be owner. But the real story wasn't viral drama. It was structural correction. Danielle stayed the rest of the evening, observed interviews, met individually with employees. By midnight, interim management had been appointed. The chandeliers still sparkled, but the energy felt different, accountable. In the months that followed, Lunois transformed. Mandatory bias training implemented, transparent seating policies established, community partnerships formed, diversity in leadership increased, revenue rose 38% within 6 months. Customer reviews shifted dramatically. Former employees who had dismissed Danielle struggled to find comparable positions. Reputation follows behavior. But Danielle never publicly shamed anyone. She didn't give interviews about the incident. She didn't monetize a moment. She institutionalized a lesson instead. Because discrimination often hides behind politeness, behind policies, behind no availability. And the most dangerous injustice is the one that smiles while excludes. Years later, Lunois became known not just for elegance, but for equity. Danielle occasionally dined there quietly, never announcing herself, just observing. because power, when used correctly, doesn't seek applause, it corrects systems. The night she was told no tables left wasn't the worst thing that happened to her. It was simply the last time someone underestimated her authority in her own house. And for every person who has ever been told they don't belong, sometimes the greatest response isn't arguing at the door, it's owning it. If this story moved you, if you believe dignity should never depend on perception, and if you stand for accountability in every space, like, share, comment, and subscribe to Black Legacy. Because stories like this don't just entertain, they remind the world who really holds the